Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide divorce, mediation, and valuation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we'll discuss business value drivers with John Warilow. He is the founder of the Value Builder System, which is a practice management software for business advisors. And he has a best-selling book called Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You. It was recognized by both Fortune and Inc. magazine as one of the best business books and has been translated into 12 languages. He's also written a few more books that we'll talk to you later about. But prior to founding the Value Builder System, he started and exited 4 different companies, including one acquired by a public company. He lives with his family in Toronto, and you can follow him by signing up at builttosell.com. He also has a podcast, and we'll talk more about that as well. The reality is, all of these drivers are just topics that if we drill down deeper, we would understand, like the business owner and the advisor would understand really what is happening. So can we take like one example of a value driver that you guys discuss in your software? And then let's drill it down to a couple things within that driver that can like business owners and advisors understand, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So let's take monopoly control. Monopoly control is what Warren Buffett refers to when he says he invests in companies with a deep and wide competitive moat. Meaning the more differentiated your product or service is, the more pricing authority you have, the more the ability to control your margins. More margins, you can invest more in sales and marketing. And so it creates this thick defense layer against people trying to compete with you if you do one thing better than anybody else. And what's interesting so that's just good business hygiene, but what's interesting from a kind of an acquirer's point of view is when they go to look at buying a business, they're making a build versus buy decision, right? So they're saying, have you built something that is so unique, so difficult to compete with, that the cheapest and fastest way for us to get into this market is to buy your company? If by contrast, you are, responding to RFPs, billing by the hour, in kind of competes, bake-offs for business, those businesses are not very valuable because an acquirer will rightly say, well, if we just lower the price by 5 points, we can pick up all that business you're winning based on pricing. Mm-hmm. And so where you have real premiums being paid in the marketplace is where there's something truly unique about what that company does. I'm reminded of a woman I interviewed on Built to Sell Radio named Stephanie Breedlove, built a great business. She does payroll for parents who have a nanny to pay. So a very, very kind of small niche within the overall payroll category, just parents who have a nanny to pay. And she built this company up and at about $300,000 in revenue. So very early in its tenure, she found it harder to find parents who had a nanny to pay. And she had sort of this fork in the road. She could effectively sell other things to her existing clients, which is what everybody was telling her to do, right? Like the kind of prevailing wisdom was like, it's 9 times easier to sell an existing customer a new product than it is to go find a new customer. And she was like, okay, well, what else do these people need? I'm selling them payroll right now. If they're busy parents with kids, maybe they need swimming lessons for their kids, or maybe they need snow removal for like all these things you could sell busy parents. Instead, she took the much, much more difficult road, which was to double down on her niche and say, no, I'm not in the business of swimming lessons. What we do is payroll for nannies. And so she took the much slower road to growth and just focused on payroll for nannies. 25 years later, she had built the business up to $9 million in revenue, just doing payroll for parents who had nannies to pay. Well, along comes care.com. Have you ever used care.com, Melissa? Do you know those guys? Yeah. So you plug in your zip code, it'll give you 5-star rated babysitters in your local market. Well, they had 7 million subscribers. If you think about it, these are all parents who have a nanny to pay, right? So Breedlove went to her and said, look, she was the CEO of Care, and she said, look, you've got 7 million subscribers. I've got this little $9 million business here. We've got 10,000 customers. What if you bought our business and you sold payroll services to those 7 million subscribers? If 1% of your 7 million subscribers, that's 70,000 customers. right? Anyways, long story short, she sold Breedlove and Associates, her little $9 million company, for $54 million. It's an example of where doing something, one thing better than anybody else, and absolutely obsessing over that for a 25-year period gives you a deep and wide competitive moat that becomes very difficult to compete with. So I think again, the public, the prevailing wisdom is, oh, and you said it earlier, Melissa, it's like revenue is the only thing that matters, right? It's like, we got to get bigger. And while I think revenue is important part of valuation, I think it overstates its importance. What I think is much more important is monopoly control, doing one thing better than anybody else, and creating that deep and wide competitive moat.